welcome to everyone to our meeting of ANC 34G. This is the regular meeting we have on the second and fourth Mondays of each month. I'm Randy Speck, I'm the chair of the commission. I represent ANC 34G03. And that's generally the area that's between Nebraska and Utah and Broad Branch. Includes things like Ingleside Continuing Care Retirement Community. We'll first introduce all of our commissioners, and they're sitting in different places tonight. We'll start with Becky, as we always do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Madak. I'm 34G04. I have Utah Avenue to Broad Branch, Tennyson to Nebraska to Morrison, and I have Lafayette Elementary School and Park in my single-member district.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Radfield. I represent 3G06, which is the western portion of Connecticut Avenue over to Friendship or Chevy Chase Park down to Military.
Hello, I'm Chris Frombaluti, represent 3G07, which is bounded by Military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada. And they also have an Oxford house block from my house, which has not been a problem in 12 years I've been a commissioner.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Shanda Tuck-Garfield. Welcome tonight. I represent ANC 34G02, which is on the part of the district closest to Rock Creek Park and Oregon Ave. Thank you again.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman, and I represent ANC 34G01, which encompasses Hawthorne and part of Barnaby Woods.
I'm Jerry Mallix. I represent 3G05. That's bordered by Chevy Chase Circle down Connecticut down Military and cross over to Nevada. Excuse me, cross over to Broad Branch.
Okay, so we have a quorum. We have all 7 commissioners here tonight, so we can conduct business. The first order of business is to adopt our agenda, which has been published on our website, on various listservs and other places as well. Are there any modifications or changes to be made to the agenda? So none. Is there a vote for adopting the agenda? 7-0. Okay, I have one announcement. I guess it's summertime, so there are fewer things going on. But anyway, I've only got one announcement tonight. And this has to do with resources available for seniors. Northwest Neighbors Village, which is a very significant resource in itself for our community in helping seniors to age in place, is hosting a presentation from the Department of Aging and Community Living on the resources that are available to seniors from various government agencies, including Department of Justice, Legal Counsel for the Elderly, Metro Access, the Office of People's Counsel, which deals with your utility rates, and the Office of Tax and Revenue. The meeting's going to be tomorrow at 10 a.m. from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Forest Hills of D.C., which is 4901 Connecticut Avenue, just down the street. And everyone's invited to that. Okay, other announcements? Becky?
Yes, we have a modernization of the Lafayette Rec Center. We're going to have a meeting on Wednesday, July 10th. It'll be here. And Randy, I'm sorry, is it 6:30 or 7?
6:30.
6:30. So 6:30 to 8:30, I believe. That's it.
Just a notification, I don't know if a lot of people actually know this, but a lot of paving by DDOT is going on in our area. And if you want to track it, which is something exciting, if you've been sitting around for 3 years and waiting for a road to get paved in your area, you can go to pave.dc.gov, and there's interactive maps that will show you what is getting paved and under what calendar over the next few quarters when it will get done. So I have one in mind. So
Would that it were accurate.
Huh?
Would that it were accurate.
Well, I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, I just want to announce that as a direct result of our meeting previous, the developer of 5301, 5303 has cleaned up his vacant lot and has built a nice new fence completely around the property and painted it white to make please the neighbors. So that, to To me, that's a big change.
I have no announcements tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that the ANC is publishing a monthly newsletter. We publish it on the 15th of the month. We published 2 so far, a May newsletter and a June newsletter. A link to sign up will be in the minutes, and we'll publish again on July 15th.
Okay, community announcements. Do we have anyone from the mayor's office here? Nope, no one from the mayor's office, from Councilmember Che's office. They're all neglecting us now. No one from Councilmember Todd's office. Everybody's going on vacation. All right, any other community announcements anyone has to make? Anything they'd like to take up? Okay, we'll go right into the agenda then. The first item is, substantive item, is the discussion and possible vote on a public space permit application seeking to pave a driveway, install a weed walk and steps, and some other related work at 6661 Barnaby Street. That's in Commissioner Clayman's single-member district, so he's going to take the lead.
I believe the owner and architect are both here. If you could just come forward and give the commissioners the drawings that you have, and we can begin a little presentation, ask a couple questions, etc. You got the big one? Okay. All right. Okay. You guys will need to see. Yeah, let's do that. Is that all right?
Sure, sure.
So, okay. Are there any residents of Barnaby Street who are here in attendance for this particular agenda item? Are there any particularly interested members of the audience in this agenda item who would like to join us? No? Well, then. And just briefly summarize what the project is and why I'm here tonight.
Hi, I am Peter Miles, who's the architect of this project, and this is the owner, Frederick McHugh. And this is really a relatively straightforward project. So there's an addition that's going on the home, but the existing driveway is on the right side of the property. But it actually wasn't a legal driveway because, as you might know, on Barnaby Street, the property line is actually pretty far back from the street, so public space extends roughly 20 feet into everyone's front yard. And DDOT wants you to have a driveway leading to a parking spot on private property. So on the right side, there was roughly 8 feet from the end of the property, from the property line to the front of the house, so there was no room to have a legal parking spot. So we are putting the driveway on the opposite side of the property, so it comes in, goes to a slight angle to go around the existing house, and then goes down to the new garage as part of the addition. And the reason for the angle is because there's a large walnut tree that if you went in a straight line, we'd have to remove that.
Large which?
Sorry?
Large what?
Walnut tree.
Oh, what about the telephone pole?
There's a telephone pole too.
Okay.
So there's a telephone pole and a walnut tree. But the walnut tree, the urban forestry portion of DDOT identified it as a heritage tree, so we don't want to take that out, so we're coming in. And we are coming straight off the street for the first 20 feet, which is what DDOT wants to see, and then go at a slight angle and go down to the garage.
Can you direct us to which page is
The second and third pages. That's the tree. Yeah.
Is everyone following along? Okay.
But you can see you have 7.8 feet between the front property line and the existing house.
Okay. And did we?
Yes.
Mr. Dupuy, are you the whole?
Yes, I do.
I'm part of the house.
Yes, we are the ones that are going to live there. Yep.
What would happen if this application is denied by a public space? And of course, we don't just deny our food application.
Yeah.
We don't object, but what would happen?
Well, we're going to run into some major issues, and we're probably going to appeal it because of the fact that the building permit was approved with the location of the new garage. They can't come back after the fact to us on that. We have all clearances by code of the 20 feet on the property line to have a straight angle to the drive to the street. So we want to preserve that big tree because of the fact that the roots come out. It's not the location of the tree itself, it's the roots structure that's under the ground that we don't want to cut out. And because it's such a beautiful walnut tree that we want to keep it there. And it's such a small angle, we have all by coding clearances that we need. And not only that, also on the right hand side of the property, we have actually the angle. Nobody really used that illegal driveway because the angle being such a ditch that you actually hit the car, not the car in the driveway.
Okay. Have you had any objections from neighbors? Have you talked with neighbors at all about this?
Nobody objected it, no.
Have you spoken with any neighbors about it?
Yes, the surrounding neighbors.
Say that again.
All the surrounding neighbors been talking to us every day. When I go by, we see them, we talk to them.
I would recommend if you, not necessarily for us, but for the public space committee, if you have anything in writing from them, I'll also submit as part of our
The meeting
application.
is tomorrow morning at 9, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to obtain that.
Fair enough. Any questions from the other commissioners? No. Randy?
No.
No questions? Gary?
What's going to happen to the old curb cut?
We're going to fill it back up and make a beautiful garden. Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to re-landscape the whole front.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any questions from? Sorry.
Yeah, you may run into a problem with public space because they generally want written approval from your neighbors as part of the testimony.
I will go back tonight, knock on some doors and see.
You know, the main thing is the ones on both sides and behind, across the street.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go back there tonight, knock on some doors.
And could you send us copies for our records?
Certainly.
Commissioner Emeritus Beach just made a good point. If you could also provide us with copies, that would be helpful. Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions from anyone in the audience? Given the nature of this, that there's not a major change or a major imposition of public space, it is in an effort to preserve heritage tree. There already was a curb cut. I see no reason to object, so I would make a motion that we do not object to this application. And that I would say one thing is pending receipt of, if there's some way to say pending receipt of letters from neighbors, but assuming that we receive that, I would see no reason to object. Is that possible to do it that way?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I make a motion that we don't object pending receipt from the neighbors.
All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
I guess we should keep one of these, but
Yeah.
otherwise
Yeah.
we can all of them. Okay.
And just one other question. The public space meeting is tomorrow. They ordinarily meet on Thursday, but just. Okay.
That is, they're not on the calendar, they're not on the calendar for Thursday's meeting.
I'll go there tomorrow and go there Thursday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Do we keep one for our records?
Yes.
Okay, fine. We'll keep that one there.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is one that has been on our agenda many, many times before. We've had visits from Wayne many times before. Back when Gary Thompson was a commissioner, it was a hot topic for many, many years. But we're going to talk about Oregon Avenue again and the status of the planning for reconstruction. And I'll turn this over to Shanda and Abe. You want to introduce Wayne?
Hi, Wayne. Again, everyone, this is my second item. Wayne Wilson, a representative from DDOT, is here tonight to talk about Oregon Avenue. Zara Doriz, another DDOT staff member, was here on March 25th and informed us that the reconstruction of Oregon Avenue, including the installation of sidewalks, the full reconstruction of the road, etc., was expected to begin this fall and be completed in fall 2021. The construction manager was expected to represent DDOT at future meetings, and we asked for an update in June at that meeting in March. And so Wayne is here to provide an update about progress toward beginning construction, timeline, and to answer questions as they might come up.
And I only want to add a few things about that. One, since Commissioner Thompson is here, and this is the first time that we've had Oregon Avenue and Commissioner Thompson's here. As you all may know, this was a years-long project, and both Wayne and former Commissioner Thompson worked on it, and I'd just like to thank him for passing the mantle and having such detailed notes and information on that, and so thank Wayne for actually walking us through, because that is how good they've been so far with this project, and we hope to continue that, walking us through each part of it to ensure that they are working in the neighborhood and that we have a great project. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Oregon Avenue, as you already know, we've been here for many years. The design is complete, and the commitments made on design as far as Norwood, St. John's, Ralph Block, who lives on Daniel Lane, has the water coming down Daniel Lane, Greg, who sold his house on the corner of Western Avenue, and he's splitting the house in 2 lots. So all the commitments for communicating the residents, sequencing, and coordinating doing construction at minimum bi-weekly for impacted residents is all what DDOT's going to facilitate. Currently, they are complete negotiation with the CM. They are looking at the bid. So the government made an estimate of about 18 million. The lowest bid came in at 22 million. So it's about 24.7% higher. So the contracting office is looking at the bid and see if it was unbalanced or any particular numbers they think funny. But as far as the design, the advertising period, all that stuff has been completed. There was some concerns because it's a long time since the last design and the current construction. So we haven't talked about asset management coming to fill in some of the erosion that's happening. There's a lot of rain on all of the Moreland St. So we looked at a lot of gullies along Oregon Avenue that currently is pretty deep ditches. So we talked about asset management coming to fill in those ditches until the construction project started this fall. Is there any particular question?
Wayne, I have one question about the website. I went back to the website again just last week, and it really hasn't changed at all. It doesn't have the current schedule on it, and even I know you're waiting for the construction manager to come on. They're going to have this community outreach program and all of that, but it's sort of misleading right now. If anyone is interested in it, goes to that Oregon Avenue site, they're going to be misled. So is there something that can be done even on an interim basis to update that schedule and provide what additional information there is now?
Yes. So it was supposed to be a smooth transition from when I completed the design and the construction manager came on. During the interim, DDOT set up a intranet site on this website that they were going to update and was pushing to make sure they do that. I have transferred to Team 1 and Wards 1 and 2, but I have been communicating with Zara and the construction manager about the commitments made and that the concerns of keeping the residents updated, the construction schedule, and making sure that any changes or any delays are possibly put out in advance. So they moved the site to an internal site, and I can follow up with Team 2 to see how far they have advanced and give you the actual link for that.
That would be very helpful.
Thank you for that, Wayne. I only have a question about now the new terms I've heard, Team 1 and Team 2. So I'm just wondering how that will work in terms of the project, proceeding forward, and what that means for our ANC and for the residents. Can you explain that so that the public will know? Because now this is new.
Well, DDOT is broken up into wards. So team 1 is Ward 1 and 2. Team 2, which my former team was, Wards 3 and 4. Teams 3 is 5 and 6, and teams 4 is 7 and 8. So I moved to team 1, which is K Street project, Transitways, 16th Street bus lanes, so Pennsylvania Avenue. So I moved to that area, so I'm handling those projects now. But as far as the projects are handled in Ward 3 and 4, that still be handled by Zara and the construction manager for Stanley Freeman. And they already, I have ordered to meet Robert Bach because he was concerned about the water coming from his backyard and stuff. So I have introduced them to him, and we were planning to bring him, but they kind of wait until the CM is on board. It was their call. But everything is still in place for team 2 to continue the management of construction.
Can you say again who the construction manager is?
Stanley Freeman. No. So he's on the construction. He's like a construction manager. So he pretty much puts a lot of construction projects. He did 16th Street Bridge or Military Road, a lot of those projects. So he does a lot of big projects for construction. Not pretty much handle the design. So we kind of split that way, but they review the construction plans as well.
And Wayne, maybe Zara is the right person to talk to about this, but what's all of this doing to the Chestnut Street sidewalk project? Because that's gotten postponed based on Oregon Avenue coming in, but now Oregon Avenue keeps being delayed. Is that project still going to get delayed until after phase 1 of Oregon Avenue?
Chestnut is handled by the new manager, Sammer. Yes, like all. So, like I said, I transferred to Ward 1 and 2, but Sammer is for Chestnut Street. But the plan for Chestnut Street will still be completed in a window of opportunity. Oregon Ave allowed or complete that when Oregon Ave is completed. So it's not a hesitation.
Right.
Do you know if National Park Service is planning to rebuild the road?
Bingham Road? Yeah, so part of that project is that when DC Water was on Oregon Avenue, they were doing sanitary line on Bingham Road. They installed the sanitary line, but when they finished it, the restoration road was not to standard. So pretty much, and MPS is holding them to repair that road, so it's back in a condition where it's drivable and it's at a good quality. So that's kind of what happened with Bingham Road.
And when are they going to do that?
I'm sure I have coordinated with MPS as far as our schedule and when they're scheduled. So they're working with DC Water to kind of figure out when they're going to do this restoration work to bring it back up.
The last communication that we received about Bingham was that it would be completed by the time that each drive is completed, which would be the fall 2019. So this fall. That's the expectation that we have.
2 months away.
I suppose it depends on your definition of fall.
Any other questions about Oregon? Yes, Thelma?
What plans have been made to have continual access into Norwood during the construction?
As agreed upon, the triangle from Tennyson will be removed so you can make left and right turns, and there will have to be flaggers so that the bus can be accessed, and also it'll be coordination of all emergency vehicles for Norwood. So there is going to be continuous service. Someone's going to flag, even when there's one lane. A flagger, a man's going to stay there to provide access to Norwood. So you always continue to have access, regardless of any phase of construction. From Oregon. As well as when they say, as we agreed upon, remove the triangle so that you can make both left and turn movements down to the side. But you'll have access from Oregon as well.
Big trucks, food delivery.
Yes.
Buses, everything.
As agreed upon.
Any other questions from the audience? Sir.
Yeah. If I'm correct, it goes from Military Road all the way up to Western Ave, right?
Right. And it wraps around to 31st Street.
Okay, and right now you don't know the schedule. What's the approximate time of construction?
Approximate.
2 years, 3 years?
Approximate time is 2 years. Each phase of potentially 9 months, but we did get to accelerate that in certain portions. The bridge, Palmer's Corridor is about 6 months. So we're putting incentives and disincentives for the contractor to complete the project early. So if he's late, then he has to pay more. He has to pay money out of the money that we're giving.
Okay, my suggestion is based on some of the construction inside. Some of the signs, detour signs, some of the confusing signs, possibly. And I guess what I'm suggesting is, maybe we'll go through, try our best to do it correct the first time, but my guess is, so come back, yeah, that's a very, very important segment, especially on a wide road. Come back to this ANC and others and make those signs right. Very, very, just for a little same thing like he was.
Yes, I agree.
When you repeat the question, I don't think some of the residents in the back heard, and what was just that?
My question was, once construction starts, and you put up the detours, since Oregon Ave is such an important part of it, and particularly right now, Wayne's Road is undergoing repairs. But once you put up some of those detours, there'll be a lot. Try to get it right the first time. And if you don't get it right the first time, ANC, others, come back and you do it. Because that is very, very important part of it.
And the ANC was very closely involved with DC Water when Oregon was shut down and making sure that the signs were correct. And to be perfectly honest, the first time around they weren't. And so we went back and worked very closely with DC Water to make sure that people knew how to get to Knollwood and other places. So we will make sure that we can do everything we can to make sure that it's easy to drive as much as possible along Oregon during the project.
Yes, sir. I just want to thank Wayne Wilson for his long-term perseverance on this issue. You personally, you've been a part of this for a long time, and we all understand why the project has been delayed or changed in all the process we've been through in the recent setback as well. You've been part of this for a long time, so I just wanted to express some appreciation for your personal commitment to the process.
We all second that too, Wayne. Thank you very much, and especially coming out. I know these meetings at the evenings are inconvenient for you, to say the least, so we appreciate your coming out.
And just one last thing, is it Sommer in the back? Sommer? You can just introduce yourself and explain your role, because it sounds like you're going to be doing some work or managing some work in this neighborhood.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, my name is Stefan. I joined DDOT like 4 months ago. Okay. I was before DDOT with MDOT. Okay. So I've been doing the job. So I'm just going to take transition from Wayne. That's where I'm taking this project. I'm going to be the manager for Chestnut and in Oregon as well. So I just appreciate he's coming from to get up this project. And I'm also glad to take over with him. Yes.
What are you going to start?
Which one? Chestnut or Oregon?
Chestnut.
After phase 1 from Oregon, we task for phase 1 and then Chestnut will be after. And now it's design. And we can figure out the design and get sorted on board. And start with Chestnut.
Thank you. Welcome. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments about Oregon Avenue, planned construction on Oregon Avenue? Seeing none, I think we can move on.
All right. Our next topic also has a DDOT component, but it has a Washington Gas component as well. Washington Gas has been doing construction work on 30th Street to replace the main pipeline that goes there, a gas pipeline. And they've been working on that since March of this year. And this is part of their overall Project Pipes construction project that is a 40-year pipeline replacement program that was launched in 2014 to enhance safety and reliability of the gas pipeline system throughout the district. The published schedule end date for this project on 30th Street is April 2020, and their published hours of work are from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, sort of separate but affecting all of this at the same time, beginning about the second week in June, DDOT began repaving a number of the streets in that area, including 30th Street, where the work on the pipeline is going on, 30th Place, 30th Street, Livingston, and McKinley. And ANC, I shouldn't say uncharacteristically, but it was very typical. We did not get any notice of that repaving work that was being done. We're supposed to get 2 weeks notice in advance for a new paving project like that. In fact, the signs were posted for no parking only a day or two before the work was going to be done, which was, of course, very inconvenient for the residents of that neighborhood. The 30th Street paving, as I indicated, also goes at that same location where Washington Gas is continuing to work and will be continuing to work for at least many months, perhaps years after that, and be digging up that same street again. So I have said at the beginning, we appreciate the work that DDOT has done to repave these streets. Some of them really did require repair, particularly 30th Place, I think, and some of the other streets were in pretty bad condition. And there's one email in particular I promised I would read tonight from a neighbor who lives on 31st Street, or 30th Place, excuse me. He says, please let your DDOT contacts know that the recent street paving project in the 5400 and 5500 blocks of 30th Place went relatively smoothly. Although we were surprised when the signs went up announcing the work, after speaking to the working crew leader, we realized that they understood the inconvenience involved in the project. The crew themselves were very nice and diligent about getting the work done. They were able to finish up 2 days early so that we got back to parking on our streets sooner than anticipated. That's the positive side. I also got emails expressing significant concerns. For instance, one email said, an absolutely bizarre street repair situation is evolving in yours and my single-member district, which I have never seen in my 40-plus years living on 30th Place. Somewhere during the weekend of June 7th to 9th, no parking signs went up for June 10th through 15th, only a day later, on 30th Place. This would allow the contractor to scrape and resurface the street. Like signs went up presumably at the same time for all of 30th Street, Nebraska to Military, and like signs also went up on Legation from the east side of 30th Street to 32nd Street. And again, all signs on these streets prohibited parking 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the resurfacing on 30th Street, he said, particularly from Nebraska to Military, makes absolutely no sense, and this entire stretch of 30th Street will be dug up over the next 3 or 4 months to lay new gas lines. Further, no parking signs were posted June 12th and 13th, covering the period from June 15th through 22nd on 30th Place from Legation to Military Road. So potentially what we have for the week of June 17th through 22nd is an area of 7 to 9 blocks where there is no parking allowed unless done illegally. Another email. On June 12th, DDOT has paving contractors working all the way down 30th Street from Nebraska. I'm told that they will resurface our block as well. This will obliterate the markers the gas contractor has already worked to put down for their work, still to be completed. The gas contractors are now spending their time piling heavy equipment and machinery onto our new sidewalks. Can you please find out why DC government is scheduling this work out of order? It seems patently ridiculous to tear up our streets again and again, and certainly an inefficient waste of taxpayer dollars. And finally, one other. This whole gas line and repaving project is so screwed up, it was disruptive and unnecessary. Obviously, someone benefited from repaving our streets when they didn't need to be repaved. It will be interesting to find out whose idea this was. Well, as a result of those communications with many of the residents, and I did talk to a number of residents about this, 3 questions were raised in my mind. First, why didn't DDOT provide the required 2 weeks notice to the ANC and the community about this work? 2, why were all the streets and in the same adjacent area repaved at the same time leaving residents with limited parking options? And 3, did DDOT and Washington Gas communicate about the repaving work on 30th Street before it was scheduled? And if so, what was the rationale for proceeding with the repaving, knowing that the road would be excavated in the near future and would have to be resurfaced again? Now that deals with the paving issue as it relates to Washington Gas. There's one additional issue that I was notified about last week from Washington Gas. And they sent me an email that said, at this time, Washington Gas is approved to work during the restricted hours of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Working these restricted hours, the project is estimated to be completed in late spring, early summer 2021, not spring of 2020. However, DDOT will allow Washington Gas to work the normal hours, 7:30 to 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., if the ANC is in agreement and will provide a letter of support. Working these normal hours, the project is estimated to be completed in the early spring 2020. So they summed up, allowing Washington Gas to work the normal versus restricted hours will allow the construction project to be completed in more than half the time. Working normal hours equals completion early spring 2020. Working restricted hours equals completion late spring, early summer 2021. So what I'd like to do tonight is to discuss both of these issues, both the Washington Gas issues and the DC paving issues, DDOT paving issues. And first, I think let's hear from DDOT about their decisions to schedule all of this repaving in such a small area and without giving us notice. And I think John Thomas is here to talk about that. John?
Good evening, everyone. How you doing? My name is John Thomas. I'm the Chief Performance Officer at DDOT. So I can give you kind of the DDOT timeline or process, and then certainly happy to take questions as needed, and I can certainly stay and talk while Washington Gas is here as well. So we developed a paving plan back in December, January of 18 to 19. We launched the paved DC plan on the paved DC site somewhere Marchish. I don't know the exact date, but we spread that out through social media, through our webpage, through news media outlets, sent it out to ANCs, posted it on our website, sent it to council members, so we publicized the plan. The plan is in its second year, where we've taken our worst roads. We've looked at service requests, we've looked at the age of service requests, we've looked at what we refer to as PCI, which is the Pavement Condition Index. And we've combined those to identify the roads in neighborhoods or in each ward that have the lowest score, essentially. Those roads are then submitted to our engineers. The engineers go out and take a look at those roads, and they confirm visually what we see from the data, right, and confirm that the road is indeed in poor condition. The roads in question in this area all had poor ratings, below 30, so anything below 30 basically means that water's getting through the surface. The cracks are large enough, or the conditions in the road are allowing water to get to the subbase. The one thing that we want to do is we do not want water in the subbase, because that's going to form we're going to have to do reconstruction, right, which is a more invasive repair. Milling and paving, although we use capital dollars, it's kind of the highest maintenance effort, right? We can potholes, we can do deep patching, which is sawing out large squares, doing and repaving those pieces. But repaving allows us to get the camber back so the water can go to where it's supposed to go and get back into the drain system and into the stormwater on the catch basins, but also it stops any water leaking into the subbase, right? If it gets into the subbase, that's where we see repeated pothole issues come winter, because we have the heave and the thaw, and we start to see this repeated where we can't keep up with the potholes and they just keep reappearing. And in this case, after it was identified that Washington Gas and DDOT were going to be in the same space, The time of the Washington Gas project looks springish, or maybe late, or somewhere between late fall and spring, depending on the hours they work. We felt it was still worthwhile for us to repave it because the condition of the road had so many issues with it, and we had issues that were concerns about the water getting into the subbase. Washington Gas will have to restore it back to the condition that we have it in. As far as posting all the streets, the other thing we did with the plans, we tried to find streets that were near each other, try to reduce some of our travel time, or just so that the contractor doesn't have to mobilize repeatedly throughout the neighborhood. And in this case, we just happen to have a series of really bad roads all in that one spot. I apologize, our team shouldn't have posted every road at the same time. It should have been done with some gap and thought of parking. So that's something we have looked into, and we kind of reconfigured how we do that when we have these close proximity pavings. So that one's definitely on us. We should have spaced that out so you had more room to park. But the idea was to get contractors come in, reduce their mobilization time, which reduces our cost, and then try to hit the worst roads in an area, get out of your way, right, so you can have your streets back. And so far we've been pretty lucky. Obviously we hit this spot here and it's caused a little kerfuffle, but we're working with Washington Gas to make sure that anything they're doing, we're clear and out of their way. We'll take this back as a lesson learned, and we've already talked about it in our asset management meetings about how we can kind of improve some of these. We have about 55, 60 miles of paving this year. This is the first conflict we've had, so we're feeling pretty good so far with 20 miles in of paving. But this is the only spot that we've had a utility conflict. We worked to try to deconflict the plan as much as possible. We'll never get it 100%. There's just too much going on all over the city to get everyone to be lined up. There'll always be something that comes up after the fact. But like I said, we took this back. We sat with the director and walked him through how we got there. We're going to make a couple changes so that we can make sure that we have a series of check-offs just to make sure that we don't miss anything. But in this case, mostly posting the signs. We know that's hard for us and hard for you guys, so we're trying to find that fine line of not over-posting, but with the rain, like you see every day, we have to keep the contractor moving, and it's really hard to post the right amount where we can move. If cars are parked there, we can go to another location and still get some work done. If it rains, right, we're behind, and then we've got streets that we've already queued up for the next few days, and so we're working on that to try to deal with this as the weather kind of brings these afternoon rains or morning rains on us.
Let's get questions from the commissioners first, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. But just, John, why are you no longer notifying commissioners or residents 2 weeks in advance of the scheduled work? Because in the past, occasionally at least, we did get that notice. Are you not doing that anymore?
No, we are moving to door knockers to try to just hit every door to go faster. In this case, I think we did some of the streets. We might not have done all of them. And so that was part of the conversation with the director, was what are we doing with our notification and how can we improve that?
Well, is it possible to just send an email to the ANC commissioner and say, we're going to do this 2 weeks from now? Because otherwise, I was caught completely by surprise. I was in Florida when all this began, and there wasn't much I could do from Florida.
Right. Like I said, with the weather, we've been having a difficult time keeping our promise with the weather and delays, that something 2 weeks out with the amount of rain we're getting, we're losing time each day. And so we're getting behind. So now our 2 week promise has become a
1 day.
3, or so it's pushing. So we're trying to find a better way to be more flexible without turning the notification piece as a bigger work component, like staff time, than the actual work itself in the field. So if we had sunny days without all these interruptions, we probably could keep to a better 2 week schedule. But this is something the director made very clear to everyone on the team, that we have to do better in that department. So Lee Goodall has been working with the asset management team and to revamp kind of how we do the notification to make sure.
Well, I'm sure you know at least 2 weeks in advance where these guys are going to be, where the contractor is going to be. Well, if you could just send out a notice to the ANC commissioner, that would be a big step. At least then we could be responsible for trying to notify people. But as it is, 1 or 2 days notice is not going to be adequate. I mean, when people just find the sign on their street and they say, and it says next day they're going to have to park somewhere else, that's not enough notice.
Yeah, they should have 72 hours, so if we posted, I didn't get that information from anybody that I saw me. If we didn't follow the 72-hour rule, then that's something that I need to take back to the team.
Wasn't followed.
Okay. So the contractor has, just like anyone else, we have to follow the same rule. 72 hours in advance, the signs go up, and then parking can be suspended.
I just want to make one point, and I don't mean to pile on, but your explanation, very reasonable. We don't want it to get so bad that it costs us more money later. That's right. And I think if people hear that on the front end, as opposed to now, it's going to be heard. Right? I mean, Randy got an email that saying, someone must be benefiting from this. There must be something shady happening. That's where people's minds go when there's not another explanation. And I think that's, I think that's the real problem. Like, your explanation made a lot of sense. I just wish people knew about it before it had already happened.
So our entire paving plan is all roads that are in these poor to fair conditions. So they had, one of the subsets of the data was that they had to be below a certain PCI or pavement condition index number. Otherwise, it didn't even make the list to be reviewed. So those roads all have similar characteristics where you have severe alligator cracking or long longitudinal cracking. We tried to explain, it's on the PaveDC website. I know we try to, I think we have like 4,000 hits already this year just alone. It does explain a lot of this. It's just trying to get that traffic there and keep pushing it through so people can review it. It does tell you when we're under construction, what we planned and what's complete. Sidewalks, roads, markings, and alleys.
Yeah, I just think we well, we're really good at communicating with people in this neighborhood, either through our meeting, minutes, listserv, email, knocking on doors. We're good at it. I think you should use us.
Are you getting our 2-week look ahead construction?
I get it. I didn't say anything about where it gets from.
Okay. And we'll make sure you're getting that at least, because that's
I wasn't on that.
Okay.
One thing about that, now that you say you're going knocking on doors, just because you're adding a method of reaching people doesn't mean that you have to do away with the old methods that you used to use, which was sending us notification. So I think, sure, great, do something new, but it doesn't mean that you have to stop doing the old ways of doing things. And in addition, I noticed that in some emails that have been sent around lately for other ANC areas, people were complaining about the short notice that people were given about no parking because people go on vacation and then they're getting ticketed or they're getting towed away. So definitely the short notice that you give has an impact on the residents and sometimes an expensive impact on them if they're not notified in advance. So letting us know, as Commissioner Clayman said, helps us get the word out to the community.
That's what Lee is working with the team to make sure that we have a consistent. We have a big plan this year, a lot of work going on, and we're trying to keep pace with the. Yep. The plan has been disseminated to everywhere we could do it over and over again. It's live. It gets changed every day. We're doing our best to drive people to that because that's where the data is, and we are working on to making sure that that is clearly disseminated in advance so people can see it.
Okay, let's hear from the people in the community. Yes, ma'am. Can you identify yourself each time and your address, please?
Absolutely. My name is Laura Solomon. Hello, everybody. I have lived at 55 North 30th Street Northwest since July of 1994. I've lived in DC since 1975 for 10 years. I wouldn't have a business. This is terrible, and I have a chronology, and I'm going to ask my neighbors. I talk very fast, and I will run through it, and I wasn't clever enough to email you. No, I emailed Brandon Todd, thinking something would actually be done. And the signs go up on June 8th, that is a Saturday. On Sunday, very early in the morning, I canvassed the neighborhood to see where are 150, 200 families going to move their cars. Because you can't pave all of these roads at one time, but the signs went up everywhere. From Military to Nebraska on 30th Street, on 30th Place, on 32nd, all the way from Utah across McKinley, and from where irrigation goes, hooks into McKinley, all the way to 32nd. And I'm thinking, right, if this were a child and we were trying to help the child do better in the future, can you only imagine the things we might say and do, kindly and lovingly, in order to help better decisions be made? Okay, so there is one half a block east of 30th Street on Legation that was not signed that morning. So those of us who could, we moved our cars there. We have a shared driveway with our neighbors next door. We worked it out, who's going to park where, when. And okay, so we go through. On Monday, I call Brandon Todd's office. On Monday, I write an email thanking him for his previous service when we had a sinkhole. He sent somebody right out, probably you, or somebody you work with. Okay? On Tuesday, Mr. Todd writes back and assigns Jackson Carnes. He's going to help me. He's going to help my neighbors.
Right here.
Good. Well, thank you. I'm Laura Solomon. You have several emails from me. I was not rude. I was polite. I was neighborly. And I had to say to you, I'm sorry you didn't help. And you didn't help.
And you haven't in the past.
Okay? And what do? You send back an email on June 11th, and what does it say? Could you please tell me the hours of the no parking? Okay, I think that's actually not my job. But I write you back, and I say 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You didn't address any of the rest of it. None of it. Okay? On Friday, June 14th, I email again to say, I'm sorry, but I'm disappointed. I am a resident. I pay taxes. My neighbors are inconvenienced. We have some elderly neighbors. We all try to do our shopping in advance. We all try to help each other out. But you know what? There was nowhere to go. Now, I think, Mr. Speck, the first email you read, I think either the first or the second, where the resident said, actually, the people on the street, they were really nice. And they were respectful of us. I believe we were respectful of them. It certainly wasn't their fault. On Saturday morning, June 15th, I emailed again to say that the signs were removed late on the 14th, but at 8:30 that morning, talk about knocks on doors, boom, 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 move your car. And new signs were put up to close the streets from June 17th to the 29th. But we have to move our cars on Saturday, or they're going to be ticketed and towed. And then we hear, this is my neighbor Marty, and he has talked to people. They're going to pay anyway. You are going to pay anyway, using our tax dollars to do this and any other source of funding, just like the rest of us. And then gas company's going to come in and rip it all up. And I'm thinking, are you kidding? Are you kidding? I mean, what are you, 12? Seriously? We had a little get-together last night in our neighborhood. And my neighbors count on me. I'm very well prepared. I'm very articulate. I can be very loud. I try to be respectful. To speak for us to say, seriously, we put you into office, or we
I'm Martin Kearns. I live at 3008 McKinley Street. I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian. I've been a resident of the District of Columbia for 45 years. I want to know how many paving contractors the District of Columbia has contracts with.
How many paving contractors?
That's what I asked. How many?
I would have to get you.
I can tell you it's Fort Myers and capital city DC. Okay?
Well, no man, can you name another please?
But I want to know.
Wait, I'd like the young man to respond to that, because that's a charge that may be an allegation that's not true. Can you, in public, define what he said?
Excuse me, let's not interrupt other people who are talking.
That's all right, I yield.
Well, let's...
I yield to young man who is, he gave an articulate description of why what was done.
Please
Should we be concerned that you have all that gas that is going to explode under?
Sir?
I heard disrespect, you're doing a great job. People, good luck.
I do have a follow-up.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just move on.
The gas company, and I witnessed this today, the gas company, I don't know whether there's a representative from the gas company of the state, the subcontractor for the gas company that is doing work in the 3,000 block of McKinley Street. Those gentlemen are doing an exceptional job. I was in commercial construction majority of my life. I worked for builders. Your organization is horrific. I want to know who is going to pay for the repaving of 30th Street from McKinley Street to Military Road.
Well, let's
let
him answer it. Please sit down and let him answer.
I want to know.
I'm sorry, before we continue, we're just not going to accept those kinds of outbursts. And if people just, I just need to say something.
People are very, very disgusting.
I understand that, Mr. Schoenecker, but what I'm saying is yelling at people in this room is not the way to solve problems. And ma'am, I'm not referring to you at all. I'm referring to the gentleman in the back. I don't think that's acceptable. Okay, you haven't done anything wrong. But I just want to be clear. I don't think that's acceptable. All right, sir, thank you. I just don't think that's acceptable.
Okay, let's move on now. John, can you answer the question?
When Washington Gas makes the 2-foot cut, and they'll have to do a full restoration and repave that piece of the road in which they do.
Washington Gas is going to pay for that?
As part of their permit condition.
Why is Washington Gas going to pay for that when the District of Columbia knew, or your department should have known, that that gas line was being replaced? And
Okay, let him answer the question, please. Just let him answer the question. Okay.
And where is the coordination between your organization and Washington Gas? Because I've only seen one inspector from DDOT the whole time the work was being done. And he was sitting in a pickup truck.
Okay, let him answer that.
So when we found out the length of time that the Washington Gas project was going to take, the road was in such a condition that we determined that we needed to pave it. It was on the plan. The impact, the engineers did the evaluation of the work that Washington Gas is going to do. That the minimal impact in the work we did. They'll resurface the piece that they have excavated as per the permit conditions, like any other excavation that would happen in the district, so that we could stop any continued degradation of the subbase that they talked about in the beginning. That we're getting a ton of rain, and roads that are in this condition with the amount of cracks and longitudinal cracks that we had, engineers make a decision, and water is not our friend when it comes to road work, and so we wanted to make sure that we protected the base as long as we could. If Washington Gas was going to be out in 30 days, we would have made a different decision. But it's going to be several months, 6 months possibly, or in the spring. And we wanted to make sure that we took care of this.
We're going to let other people speak now because... No, sir.
I respect you, but this is not accurate.
Well...
What this gentleman is saying is not accurate. There was nothing wrong with the road, the street between McKinley and Military, that it needed to be repaired immediately.
Okay, well, we got to rely on somebody for some expertise.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, okay, let's let somebody who hasn't spoken speak. Yes, sir.
I remember the park here, moved into the neighborhood like 1 year ago, I live on 13 and litigation. Complex, whatever happens, so I think you can fix it in the past. I'll make sure that whatever patch gas company is going to do is going to done properly. We can put sand underneath and just concrete and several layers where it's supposed to be done. They patched the sidewalks several times in the street last year, and it's really impossible to even take a kid or scooter or biking because it's so in bad condition. Whenever it's the issue with the gas company, they said, well, once we build the street, we can fix all the sidewalks. I don't trust much their work in paving, I trust with gas. As a city representative, how do you make sure that quality is better?
So the gas company will contract out the construction work for the things that aren't their specialty, such as paving or doing sidewalk work. Our public space inspectors under Matthew Marcoux will inspect that work to make sure it meets we have something called the Gold Book, and it has clear restoration and how that has to be done, the compaction rates. They'll have to do materials testing, so they'll have to send cores to our lab to make sure that the concrete is the right density. They'll do the same thing for the asphalt, and all that work will happen through our public space office.
And that includes also the sidewalks that were patched, sometimes
Yeah, any work that they have to do as part of the restoration of their permit will go through that QC process with our public space inspectors.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask first that you share that contact with the ANC so we have access to it? Because Washington Gas came in about 2.5 years ago before my neighbor moved in. There was a big, probably 12-foot hole in front of my house. I have 2 small kids. It took over a year and many emails to Mr. Todd and the ANC before they actually fixed that. And I'm still waiting for restoration. So if there's a point of contact and we got for quality control, I'd like that information shared with everyone.
We'll make sure we get Stacy's name.
Okay. But then
And she's our chief.
I think the really important point is when there's a vacuum of information, people are going to talk to who's ever available. And in this case, that was the contractor down the street. And there was a lot of misinformation shared. At one point, I think it was on Friday of the project, 30th Street was torn up. And we were told it was going to stay that way until the gas project was completed. In fact, somebody from that company came around and took down all the no parking signs. And I was at a neighbor's house until 10:30 that night. No signs were put up until the next morning when they came around knocking, threatening people that their cars were going to be towed. And as my neighbor Laura said, we have elderly people in our neighborhood. You cannot threaten to tow their cars with 0 notice over the weekend. They were very upset about it. And again, in a vacuum of information, you go to the contractor. So I appreciate the commitment to do better, but I really think the 2-week notice, you would have avoided probably 90% of the problems in this group. If at least people had information and could connect the dots where they clearly weren't done.
Okay, we're running out of time for this item. I want to see who else wants to speak. Lee? And yes, sir, in the back, after Lee.
In terms of a positive comment, you got the buses still in 30th place, and all of the Fort Worth people on the street were very, very polite. Now, I probably did get a lot of misinformation, but one of the things that I learned, I think it is correct, because I got 3 or 4 construction, is that Fort Myers now has a large contract. By large, I mean they do a lot of geographic areas at once. It does not work unless you're working very closely with the ANC or some other local representatives who are legitimate. There is no way, for example, one of the streets was supposed to have been repaired, finished. There is a place between legation and military. Well, we ran out of asphalt. The next day, well, it's raining, we can't do that. I don't think these big multi-block things work unless you start working very closely with the ANC and the ANCs plus other local representatives. Potentially, I think you have a mess on your hands. And I'm surprised that more things like this have happened in the past. I was ANC commissioner for 10 years. The chairman, 1982-83. 3. I also am a retired city planner who's worked a lot with local government. These big block things, unless you have really thought it out, will not work.
Okay. Thanks, Lee. Yes, sir, in the back, you had it.
Sorry for losing a little bit, but your fabulous description of what you did to my road fears me ridiculously with regard to it has a fabulous gas leak underneath it. You ate it. You know that we're going to be replacing the pipe. I apologize.
Let's not use that language.
This is about idiocy on all levels in terms of my government, my politicians, everybody in this room. We have a huge gas leak under this road. Stephen, will your wife get up? Please. No. So, this young lady and I, about 2 years ago, you remember that young man who met in the street?
Sir.
No, we met a young man in the street from the gas company who stopped arbitrarily because he smelled gas. What I'd love to know from the gas company is how many million times over the 30-year period you've resolved that issue when I begged, like, I even said to the guy, this is an engineering issue. The flood water, as the floods that happened from the previous, like, what are you going to do about the drain on the canal when it never drains?
Okay.
You're a big guy.
Sir.
What about the drain on the canal? You repaired it?
Sir.
It never drains, and you come and you say it's no problem.
Please lower your voice.
The gentleman just described.
Hey! Be quiet. You're going to have to yell.
No, I'm sorry. The gentleman described a condition of the street which allowed the large vaping of gas. If we don't have that vaping of gas,
we're going to adjourn the meeting and we'll.
Excuse me, that's just rude to
I know, but it's because everything is being not talked about. What about this?
Sir, either leave or we'll call the police.
Or I'll take off, because I'm not going to sit here and listen to you.
Right. Okay, we've got to move on to the other Washington. If you can do it in 1 minute.
Also, control yourself.
Can you, before we continue, I'm going to say something. Can I have the floor, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So what I was talking about earlier, we're going to lower the blood pressure in here just a little. Can we all please take a deep breath? Before we continue, can we just take a deep breath? It's inappropriate, right? That's inappropriate. Are you going to yell at Mr. Thomas? Okay. Okay, good. That's Mr. Thomas, yeah. Okay.
So, are we going to separately talk about Washington Gas? Yes. I just want to say, it's unclear to me.
Include this.
I live on 30th Street, 5414, where the Washington Gas folks have 4.5 months kept all their heavy equipment. There are no parking since it started February 1st. It went through to March 31st. And then since then, they've had no emergency, no parking. So it's unclear to me whether Washington Gas is notifying the city. It's unclear to me whether DDOT would have known that they were doing the ground and they had not finished their work. So I don't know. We're still to Washington Gas's site, website that shows the pipe, where they're replacing the pipes. And the place in front of my house, where for 4.5, almost 5 months, they part-time machinery and the porta potty for about 3 months is not listed there. So I don't know whether they've done that work considered done. So I just want to make sure that
We're getting to Washington Gas as soon as we're done with DDOT.
So I'm not, it's unclear to me that these folks have the proper notice from Washington Gas. So I just want to make sure.
Okay, let's hear from Washington Gas now.
Well, I just want to say that we're working, I spoke to Greg at Washington Gas this morning, and last week spoke to the project manager, so we're continuing to work to make sure that the extent and range of the project is clearly understood, and that our public space inspectors know timing and revisit. So when we get that clarity, to make sure we all have the extent of the project and the impact of the project, we'll report back to the ANC to make sure that, and the same with the sidewalk.
We've got to talk about Washington Gas here. There's some issues we have to decide about Washington Gas. So thank you, John. And I apologize for people who didn't treat you as respectfully as you deserve.
That's fine.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, let us know. We're happy to help, and we'll, we are certainly working to do a better job. The posting, that should have never happened that way. I spoke myself to the project team that worked on this. We devised a different way for them to work through that process when we have large paving in a concentrated area, just to ensure that there's enough fall over space for everyone to park, so they can do a better job next time. So they're not planning out. They need to reserve the parking for the areas that they're going to pave. And if they go too far, and I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to get out of there and they're trying to reduce the impact, but by doing that, they created a separate problem for themselves. So, lessons learned on that.
Okay, let's hear from Washington Gas. And I want to say, preface all of this, you can come up on ahead, Wanda. We're going to treat each other respectfully or you're going to have to leave. I mean, that's just the bottom line here. We're not going to tolerate that kind of outburst in our meetings. We are all mature adults. We're all capable of acting reasonably and respectfully to each other. So please, no more yelling, no more screaming about any issue. Okay? Do I have your consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay. I understand people are upset and they're angry, but there's no reason to just let loose on someone. No, we're gonna move on now. Okay, DeWanda?
Respect us.
Yes, DeWanda?
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Steck, for allowing us to come. And commissioners and residents, we do understand there's a lot of concern regarding the 30th Street project. So Washington Gas wanted to bring our manager of permits and paving, IJS in the booth, and we have our construction manager, Frank Frost, here to answer any concerns and address any concerns that the community has. If we are not able to address your concerns, the gentleman spoke regarding the situation in front of your home. We're glad to get your information and try to resolve it as quickly and as efficiently as we can. And so I'm going to turn it over to IJS, who has the information on permits and paving to address a number of concerns that were raised this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Commissioner Speck, as you mentioned, how the Washington Gas project came about, and this is part of our Project Pipes program, which has been committed to the Public Service Commission for completion between this year and 2020 and 2021. So, we have broken the project up into 3 phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. And initially, we started with phase 1. We requested the permits from DDOT. We got the appropriate permit. We requested the occupancy permit to occupy public space. We got that occupancy permit, which allowed us to park our equipment on the road where we requested from DDOT. And the project was necessary to be broken up because we needed, this is a 24-inch cast iron main that operates at 20 pounds. It's probably the largest cast iron main in our system.
Speak into the microphone.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's on.
Okay. So, and we're replacing with 16-inch plastic. So both of these existing main and the new main are very large diameter gas mains that take a while for us to work with. It requires large equipment, and daily production rate slows down quite a bit. We estimate, I've been involved, I'm a 38-year veteran of the natural gas industry. I've been working with Washington Gas as an employee and as a consultant for 38 years. On 16-inch plastic pipe, we will be happy if we can lay, typically pipe comes in 40-foot lengths, so we'll be happy if we can put 2 lengths in the ground at a time. And that would usually, that's about 80 to 120 feet if it's 2 to 3 sticks of pipe. And that's over a 6 to 7 day period. So when you extrapolate that out over the length of the project, which is almost 1,900 feet, we estimate it will take us anywhere from 5 to 6 months to finish what we have left. So for the last few months, we've been working on phase 1. We had to do that work that way in order to be able to disrupt the feed in that pipe so that we can disconnect it from the system and replace it. We couldn't have done it without doing phase 1. And we have to finish it by November because it is a large diameter pipe that feeds a big area that we don't want to have out of the system once the heating season starts. So our hope, I know Frank's hope is that we get to finish this by September, October, and that's one of the reasons we had requested from DDOT extended working hours, or what we call normal hours, which in the residential area would be 7 to 7. Unfortunately, that's not what we got, and DDOT asked us if we could get permission from the community. If the community could agree to that, then they will be willing to look at that. So that's what we're looking at. We're going to proceed with the hours we've been given, but obviously we want to get out of there as quickly as possible and minimize the inconvenience to everyone as much as possible. I can take specific questions.
It's just a very quick question, because I live here and I'm watching people work some of the time.
Pardon?
When do they work?
The crews?
I mean, if you do the math, if someone does the math, with, I don't do gas, but I do math.
Yeah. Well, that was a discussion.
We're talking about October, September or October, not with the math, not if people are working, not with the math.
So we had this discussion with the DDOT permit office, with the chief of permitting, Elliot, along with Mr. Levon Petrosian, who handles the traffic control. We tried to explain to him that on a large project like this, it takes us an hour, hour and a half in the morning to set up the staging area, lift up the steel plates, get everything ready. And then at the end of the day, on the back end, it's the same amount of time to put everything back in place so that everybody can move around while we're gone in the middle of the night. So if I have the restricted hours, which is what I was given, which is from 9:30 to 3:30, that's a 6-hour window. Of that 9:30 to 3:30, it's going to take me an hour and a half in the morning to set up, and another hour at the end to take down. That reduces my window down to 4 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours of actually digging and laying new pipe. So we would definitely, believe me, we would like to have more time than that to get that work done and be out of there as quickly as possible. So that's why we have requested.
Let me ask a question about the schedule, because what we were told, this is in Wanda's email that she sent to me, was that the original schedule would have, with restricted working hours, you weren't going to be able to complete until late spring, early summer 2021.
Right.
And then with normal working hours, the expanded working hours, completion would be in early spring 2020. Though you're talking though about finishing in October. How does that? But how does that coincide with the projection that you were going to finish in spring of 2020?
We're including paving, restoration, and that as well. With this large diameter pipe, we can't take it out of service during heating season. So we want to bring in additional crews, work extended out. Our hope is we don't run into any obstacles along the way. We'll complete the pipe work fall, September, October. Still not in heating season, we'll be able to abandon the old pipe, gas out the new pipe, and hopefully there's still enough restoration time to get the paving contractor in and do permanent restoration on the roadway. What we run into is when we finish projects in November or December, because of the winter weather,
Can't use
paving,
asphalt.
Right. That won't happen until spring.
Right. Okay. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, we have a moratorium.
I understand that better.
Can I add? Yeah, so DDOT will place a moratorium.
John, come up to the microphone.
So DDOT will place a moratorium on any project. So if the paving doesn't commence, if the restoration work doesn't start by a certain time in the fall, that will immediately cause them to do a temporary restoration, and then they'll have to come back in the spring to do a proper full restoration. So that's another reason that drove our decision, because most likely, probably full restoration, knock on wood, maybe we can get it done this fall. They can get it done this fall, but it's more likely it may be in the spring.
Okay. Look, let me just, before we do anything further, how many people are here who live on 30th Street? Okay. They presented two basic scenarios. One is you work, excuse me, we're going to take a vote here for just a second. Two scenarios. One is you work longer hours each day and you finish earlier. The other is you work shorter hours every day and you don't finish until 2021. What's the preference here for longer hours and finishing earlier.
I need more facts.
Okay, tell me what facts you need.
Sure. I need the information again. I was listening, but I wasn't doing a simple calculation for how much time it takes, the sections, the length of the sections, how much time it takes to take it out and put it back in. If the team, the crew then works the longer hours. Because you know what, having lived in the city, and I love it, since 1975, talk is cheap. Okay, not personal at all. But all kinds of things are going to happen that, like my grandmother waited her whole life for the Messiah. They just never happen.
Okay,
So
we're not going to be able to definitively say one way or the other whether this is going to work and they're actually going to be able to finish by the fall. It's got to give them a chance to do that, as opposed to postponing everything and taking a lot longer until 2021. I'm just asking, I assume though that their projections are correct. Which do you prefer?
But
Shorter?
There's still missing facts, right? So one is, will that include weekend work? Two, is the much more extended period including work all the way through, or you also have a moratorium on work for some period of time? So in other words, there might be several months at that time when there's no work being done. And three, isn't another option just to get more people in there instead of having a crew of 10, let's say, get a crew of 40 in there and then you do it 4 times as fast.
Which is how they built China.
So a couple
There's a lot of
of
other options.
Okay.
You're missing. Let's answer this question.
So we have a lot of projects, we have a lot of work to do in the district, so can't take all the resources and throw them on one project, and it's a safety issue also. It won't be productive, people be tripping over each other. We have, to your point, we're hoping to bring in additional crews, as many as 3. Have 3 crews work this project with the extended hours. We want to work from 2 directions. Now our goal is, if we have the longer hours to work, one of the things we take into consideration, you asked for some math. It takes about a day and a half, depending on other utilities or obstacles that you find in the ground, to open up about a 100-foot trench. So we figure a day and a half to open up a 100-foot trench. So that's in front of 2 or 3 houses. It'll take another day, possibly 2 days, to join those sticks of pipe, put them in the trench, and then another day or 2 to get that section back. And we can put a temporary patch down. So our goal is
3 days for approximately, all goes well.
Yeah,
3 days for 100 feet.
Yeah, our goal is to take a section of about 120 feet and have that dug out, the pipe installed and backfilled, and then have another crew come in behind with a temporary patch. So we get out in front of that house and we move on down, or those houses.
And how long? What is the total length of the thing?
The total length of the project is 1,845 feet.
And the pipe is how long? The actual section of pipe, which is down on 30th Street right now. I live where they are doing the work right now. My neighbors and I.
I'm warning everyone. We've got another 5 minutes for this topic. So that's all we're going to take is another 5 minutes.
Excuse me, sir. Can I have a word? Thank
Yes.
you. One of the reasons we're feeling a little stunned is that for months, the blocks were cordoned off in one form or another with signs saying you can't park here, both sides of the street. And I mean, some of us are actually home during the day on occasion. It looked like nothing was being done. So that's I think the overarching concern is that when we're being kept from parking in front of our spaces, in front of our homes, will work actually happen? Is there a way to manage that more efficiently? Because it went for months, and not just this year. We've had gas work done every year for the last, I think, 2 or 3 years. So that's our concern. We're working on it off of an experience that wasn't efficient.
I can assure you, you're welcome. I can assure you the work will get done. We're committed to that. We need to replace that pipe, and we're going to replace it in this go around that we're already working. To answer your question, sir, you wanted to know the length of the pipe?
I think it's like 40 feet, right?
Well, for each stick of pipe.
Yeah, for each stick, it's 40 feet. I'm watching the gentleman put it in on the street. Your subcontractor's doing a good job for what they have to work with, because DDOT does not have plans that show where the sewer or the main water lines or anything else are. They have to find the people that are replacing the gas lines, have to find those, locate them. There are specs that you cannot put the gas line within X number of feet or inches or whatever. My concern is, originally, you're right, it said no parking on McKinley Street between Nebraska and 30. No parking between 9:30 and 3:30. Now it's restricted 24 hours a day, 6 days a week.
I think what you're seeing is with all of our permits on these projects, part of the permitting process, the plans we submit, we work with DDOT and find a staging area to store the equipment. So that's a staging area designed for us to put pipe and equipment. Now,
Okay, sir, we're going to have to move on. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. We've got to talk to someone else. Let someone else speak. Sir? Sir? I'm asking you politely, sir. Sit down. Sir? Okay, yes ma'am. You haven't spoken at all.
My name is Beth Ann Siegel. I'm the first neighbor, I think, to right to this respect. I live at 5414 30th Street, the white brick house, directly across the street from your staging area. Maureen and Michael are our neighbors. You have used that staging area since February. Currently, there are piles of trash. There are plastic bottles, electrical tape, all over the road, because I believe, sir, you said that DDOT talked to Washington Gas when you coordinated repaving work. I was there that day. I spoke with Floyd, who was your site supervisor, who told me they knew nothing that the road was going to be repaved that day. They were taking heavy equipment, digger machines, box trailers, and backing them up onto the brand new sidewalk that was finished last spring. There is a pile of asphalt on the sidewalk, which I'm sure has pretty much ruined that sidewalk.
No, they're using that on McKinley Street.
Okay, we're going to stop in 1 minute.
What I'm asking is this simple.
We're going to stop in 1 minute.
Can you attend to those issues? There's no reason why.
Please let them have one last comment.
yes, we can, and I will leave my business cards. Yes.
Okay.
We run into this on projects, and we can't, on our own, we can't just move the staging area because it's permitted by the district. Generally, what we do is we get with the inspector. If you contact us and you're having trouble with our staging area, we get with the DDOT inspector and we try to find another location that is suitable for everyone. As far as the trash and the mess, I'll have our supervisors on site. Generally, we ride over the site every single day. I'll have someone look into that. They shouldn't be leaving trash laying around. It should be an organized, neat job site. Like I said, I'll leave you my business cards. If you see it's a mess, give me a call.
Okay. Okay, we haven't gotten any information at all from anyone about which of these scenarios would be preferable. Assume for the moment that they are, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to decide this tonight because we've run out of time and I haven't been able to get enough information from people in the audience or on the block to determine which you would prefer. So Washington Gas, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to give you an answer today. We'll address this at our next meeting on July the 8th.
Wait a minute, because that's 3 more weeks when they could be working for more productive.
Well,
so
if you can give me an answer. Okay, all those people on 31st Street, 30th Street, excuse me, all those people on 30th Street who prefer to have a shorter schedule with longer hours, raise your hand. All those who prefer a longer schedule with shorter hours.
There you go.
Okay, all right. I will make a motion. Hold on, please.
Why limit the 30? How about the inmates?
Okay.
Yeah.
Longer.
Can I say something? I know what you said about, they have to move, and I've watched them, I'm at home all day. Yes, they have to move the big iron plates, that takes time. But you know what? Mondays they leave at 2 o'clock. Fridays they leave at 1 o'clock. So they're not working from 9:30 to 3:30. I'm sorry that they are.
Okay.
And there's some days.
We're either not going to vote on this at all, or I'm going to make a motion that we support the longer hours and shorter schedule. Okay, all those, commissioners, you have any discussion of that? Are you prepared to vote today, or you want to postpone this?
Vote today.
Okay, all those in favor of the supporting with DDOT the longer hours and shorter schedule?
Right.
7-0. Okay. All right, thank you. We will notify DDOT. Okay, and yes, please take advantage of that.
Both Frank and I will be here if you guys get this one.
Thank you all for coming out.
In addition, we got some cards in the back with contact information on it if you need some of this, if you need to contact us.
Okay, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda. Please go outside if you're going to talk, so we don't disrupt the rest of the meeting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote on potential commission action related to the leases at 5745 and 5900 Moreland Street to Oxford House. We're going to limit this to 15 minutes. That's all we're going to do. The question for the commission is whether the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs should grant Oxford House's application for an exemption from the zoning requirements that limit occupancy of residential dwellings to no more than 6 unrelated persons. DCRA received the application on June 4th. DCRA director advised us this afternoon that DCRA cannot extend the deadline for making a decision on the requested exemption. We had asked if there was a possibility they could extend that, and they said no. Thus, DCRA will have to make a decision on this request for an exemption no later than July 5th. We discussed this at 2 previous meetings, one on June 10th, commission meeting, and again, a 2-hour meeting that was devoted exclusively to this on June 19th that was convened by Councilmember Todd, and 4 of the commissioners attended. We heard extensively from DCRA, the Department of Behavioral Health, Oxford House, and residents. And Councilmember Todd also encouraged anyone with comments to submit them to DCRA, the DCRA director. This meeting builds on what we've heard before, but we want to hear from anyone who has not attended or spoken at either of those 2 previous meetings. And after that, the commission is going to discuss how we're going to proceed. And like I said, we're going to limit this to a very short period because we have heard extensively from a lot of people on this issue. So who would like to speak on this issue? Yes, please. Can you identify yourself? You go up to the microphone would be preferable.
My name is Karen Perkins. I live at 3901 Military Road Northwest, which is on the northwest corner of the intersection of 39th and Military. For about the last 15 years, there was an Oxford House on the southwest corner of the intersection of 39th and Military Road, so directly cat corner from my house. I have lived for 20 years in that house. I think the Oxford House has been there the vast majority of that time. First, I just want to say that I'm not here on behalf of anyone who asked me to come. I saw it on the agenda. I understand there's concern about the new Oxford House residences on Moreland Street, and I just thought it might actually inform the conversation to share actual experiences of living and raising children in direct connection with the Oxford House for so long. Generally speaking, Oxford House has been a terrific neighbor. I don't know for sure. I think the Oxford House in our neighborhood, which has just recently closed as the owners sell the property, housed up to 8 residents at any given time. You should probably check that because I'm not totally positive. But and I will say that they have been exemplary neighbors. They've been respectful. They have been very quiet. The only time I can think of any kind of public safety incident, I think there was a smoke detector issue and the fire department came, but there have not been any public safety incidents that I've been aware of. For the most part, the residents keep to themselves. To the extent that residents have gotten to know neighbors, it's been an incredibly friendly way. My husband and I are members of Temple Sinai, and I know that over the years Temple Sinai has employed at least 2 of the residents of that Oxford House. And I actually got to know those 2 residents as members of the Temple Sinai community, as thoughtful, intelligent, caring members of Temple Sinai before I even realized that they were my neighbors at Oxford House. So they really have been terrific neighbors. Some of them are very, friendly and get to know people. Others are entirely quiet. I know there's some concern about turnover of residents. I mean, maybe once a year I see a U-Haul truck come and move somebody in or out, but it really has not been disruptive to our community, to my family, to our children. And I would not hesitate to live next to an Oxford House again.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
So my name is Alan Silkley. I live at 3015 Oliver Street, and I'm also a member of the Temple Sinai community, so it's nice to hear. And I wanted to urge this group to pass a resolution saying no to the exemption that they're seeking. And the reason, from my perspective, is it's not so much about the Oxford House residents. When my wife and I moved into the neighborhood a few years ago, one of the things, the main attractions for us raising a couple of young girls was that by DC standards, it's a low-density community, right? I mean, there's a 6-person cap on non-family members in the house for a reason. We're trying to keep the population at a certain level. And I think when you look up and down our street, we have 3 people at home, 4 people at home, 5 people at home. I think that's pretty much about it for the most part. And what's happened though is a couple of houses down from us at 3007 Oliver Street, the house has been rented out to a bunch of college kids. And college kids are gonna do what they're gonna do. They're loud and they throw parties. And okay, we put up with it, so be it. But then right next to them, now we're talking about another house which would have 10 people in it. And then across from them, 9 people in it. And you know what, they could be the most lovely people in the world, and I don't doubt that. The issue is just congestion and density in the neighborhood. That's what's really driving me and what's driving so many of the neighbors here is we moved into the neighborhood because it has a certain character. It was a low density neighborhood, and I do have a concern. I know a lot of us have concerns as well. If you have a house with 10 and you have a house with 9, you could have a lot of cars coming in, and I know for the most part Oxford House has said, well, generally their residents don't have a lot of cars, and that may be, but there's no guarantee that it'll stay that way over, I think it's a 5-year lease that they would have in each of these homes. So I would just say from our perspective, given that it is unusual, I don't think there's anywhere else in the district where there are 2 Oxford houses directly across the street from each other. If there is, I'd like to be aware of it, I don't think that's the case. Given the unique circumstances here, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, okay, let's just cap each one at 6, right? That's 12 people total, as opposed to 19. So, given that we've already got the college kids, now we're talking about 2 houses, one with 10, one with 9. I just think out of kind of respect for the neighborhood as a whole, let's just try to keep it capped. And that's what my perspective is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gary.
Time for one more?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking the commissioners. It's been a tough meeting. I thought this was going to be a hot issue. I'm here to speak in favor of the exemption. I thought a lot about this issue. I've lived in the neighborhood for 26 years. And the first time I became aware of the ANC's existence is when Zeke's house came to our neighborhood on Western Avenue. And there was a lot of concern about what these individuals with mental illness may do. And of course, it's all turned out to be justified. They've been wonderful neighbors and a wonderful part of our community. I also live several doors, 2 doors down from a home that takes care of adults with severe disabilities, and it's just fine. And I think most people know, and there's a group home-like residence in almost every block in Ward 4 and in DC. So I think these Oxford houses are going to be just fine. Full disclosure, 15 years ago I was a pro bono lawyer for Oxford House in a case that had to do with insurance, but I do understand the model. And the model requires there to be, it's time tested, be between 8 and 10 individuals in the home in order to create the mutually supportive environment that helps these individuals overcome their alcohol and drug addiction. And they've got hundreds of homes around the country, and that's what works. They know their model best, and these are individuals with a disability under the law, and there's a reason why the law favors an exemption like this, a special or reasonable accommodation in this case. And that's because individuals in a situation like that need the extra protection to live in a residential setting, despite certain zoning or other types of regulations or limitations that may otherwise preclude them being in the neighborhood. So there's a reason why the Fair Housing Act favors the granting of the exemption, and arguably might require it, but substantively, equitably, when you think about what's at stake here for these individuals, I favor granting the exemption. I favor welcoming them to the neighborhood. And I want to assure that the neighbors who are concerned about their presence, I understand the concern, but my experience has told me time and time again that what you think might be a problem never is. And these are sure to be welcome members of our community.
Very, very well said. Okay, we've got to move on. I thought we were going to have just 2 people to speak. And yes, Frank. Yes, go ahead.
Frank Butler, 5877 Nebraska Avenue. I'm the 3rd commissioner from our little part of the world here tonight. To make it short, I'm opposed to granting an exemption. I have the frat house right behind me. I have one of the Oxford houses behind me and to the left. The second Oxford house is around the corner. Obviously, this places a great burden on us, me and my neighbors, in terms of traffic, noise, pollution, whatever. We've already had a case where a car was parked blocking a driveway. So, and we called the police for us to do. One thing I'd like to get is a copy of the letter, the exemption letter. Oxford House sent. Is that possible?
We don't have it either. It went to DCRA, not to us.
How can we vote on something we don't have?
Janet?
Councilmember Todd, as you all know, we've been working closely with Councilmember Todd on this, and his Chief of Staff, Cheryl Newman, emailed a copy of the letter, not officially to the ANC, but to the list of residents who had expressed concern about the Oxford House. So that is a letter that was not officially sent to the ANC, but we can access that letter. And also we're working closely with Councilmember Todd. So after today's meeting, we can work with him to see that you get a copy of it.
Well, I got a notification in that letter. In fact, that's the only reason they knew about the letter. And I was sort of very confused by the whole thing because a special exemption means something totally different. In any event, and I emailed Cheryl Newman.
Yes, she's Councilmember Todd's chief of staff.
She's out of town tomorrow.
Yes, we have a copy of that, and as, basically since the beginning of April, as you all know, AA's been working closely. So, and there is a long email trail, and actually a package that would include the letters that Councilmember Todd and I have written to both the director of DCRA as well as the Department of Behavioral Health. So we can get you copies of those letters.
Okay, if you will, thank you.
30 seconds, please. 30 seconds.
I'm Joshua Winchell. I'm also 3901 Military Road, right across the corner from an Oxford House. I'm here to say that they were better than average neighbors. They were quieter, they had fewer cars in their household, and I feel guilty saying this. They were quicker to shovel snow off their sidewalks than I was and most of the other neighbors. They were also a lot better at weeding and taking care of their shrubs. Objectively, they were better neighbors, and I love all my neighbors. I will miss our Oxford House neighbors because they were fantastic neighbors. So I would be so pleased if they stayed as our neighbors. They're not, but I'm here along with my wife to try to at least set some of your minds and hearts at ease about these individuals. They've been fantastic. They've been better than average in terms of their investment as neighbors. So that was it. Thank you so much.
Okay, you have something brand new? Had never heard before? Wonderful.
Yes. I'm Kim Hutchinson. I live on Oliver Street, and it's not a question about how nice your neighbors are. I'm going to speak to your point. You can have one neighbor who's awful. This is about 2 houses on our street. So that is, I just want to remind you, please, that we're talking about 2 houses with the potential of 19 extra people. So that's, I just wanted to remind you.
Thanks.
I guess to that point, I wanted to update the community on an email that the ANC had received just quickly from Cheryl Newman. You may have received this, Ms. Hutchinson, that basically the Councilmember Todd's office was told that as now, the second house on Moreland Street will remain vacant. They will not be moving the women in, and they are trying to get out of their lease with the current landlord, Ms. Wagner. According to Ms. Newman, they are going to follow this closely and note that they're still asking for reasonable accommodations only on 1 house to allow more than 6, and 10 is their number. So this is as of 5:30
Yes.
this afternoon.
I'm sorry.
Yes, and so according to Councilmember Todd, they're saying that this is very good news and they're pleased that our collective efforts have been beneficial, and thank you for your cooperation. That's the update from the council members.
Yes, I did see that, and I think that it's not a done deal.
No.
They're not
Right.
out of the lease, so we are still very concerned that the house belongs to Oxford House. There is a lease, and so it's not a done deal. And so I'm asking that the exception not be made until it is a done deal, because that's fair to the community. You're asking for a certain amount of people, and you're deciding now without having the full issue worked out between Oxford House and the landlord.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I did promise one other thing, that I would read an email that I received from Mary Lou and Robert Payne, who live at 5401 39th Street. They said, we have lived directly across the street from Military Road, Oxford House for several years. During that time, we have come to know the residents there as serious, hardworking citizens and good neighbors. They have always shown respect for themselves, their home, and the people around them. We have nothing but high regard for the Oxford program, which provides residents with the opportunity to be part of a self-directed, autonomous group. Oxford House has a proven track record throughout the region. We have seen it in action. Okay, so we've gotten a variety of viewpoints. I have a proposal. That's a little different. We've had a lot of discussion among the commissioners, and I invite more discussion if you want to talk about it.
Can I just ask clarification
Sure.
on what you just read? So you said they're no longer asking for an exemption for the second house. So have they officially changed it to only be asking for it for one house?
Jason, can you clarify that?
No.
Okay. Well, here's going to be my proposal. That when we can talk about this, but my proposal is that we support an exemption for one house on the expectation that the exemption application for the other house has been withdrawn or will be withdrawn, and that we can address that at a later point.
Are you saying we make no comment about the second house?
Because it's been, we're assuming
it's been withdrawn.
It's been withdrawn.
Can we just talk amongst ourselves for just a sec? Just for like 2 minutes, maybe?
Yes.
I don't mean to cut you off, I just want to give us a chance to just...
And then I know you all, and just to give you a backstory, this is the thing I think, and it's going to be quick, that the community doesn't see from the ANC. There have been countless hours, and the reason we cannot say whether things are official or not or in writing, because on a lot of these issues where there's 30th Street or even Oxford Street, and I can, or Oxford Homes, the issue, and I must just say at the outset, the current residents of Oxford Homes have been exemplary. They have not done anything in our neighborhood, and we appreciate and thank them for that. But there have been a number of hours amongst the commissioners, every single commissioner here sitting here, along with the council member's office, all the agencies. We literally, for the last week, have been on the phone every day with different people, and whether it's by email. We don't tell you that as residents because we want to come and hopefully come to a good outcome on this, but every resident doesn't see that, and sometimes when you have the limited time in the meeting, residents may get upset, but know that we would not have run for these volunteer positions if we did not have the heart of the community in mind, and if we were not walking hand in hand with you. But at the same time, we just want to ensure, and this is where my background as a lawyer comes in, and I can't take off that hat, we want to ensure that even if we disagree with someone, that person that we disagree or that individual, they still have rights too. And so we want to basically still have good communities, have our residents, but also ensure that we balance those. So you're not seeing that, and we can't give you official answers on formal paperwork because we've been doing a lot of talking and calls and unofficial stuff on this issue. So just to give you that piece of it. And I hope that we can continue to work together on all issues, whether it's 30th Street or Oxford House, but the commissioners, and by no means are the commissioners all one way or all the other way, but we've gotten very few points, as you can see tonight, and that just goes the disparate opinions within our community, and we want to bring that together for the best outcome of everyone, including the residents of Oxford House, because they are on a great path, and honestly, they have not done anything in the community. They've been great. They've offered their services. But I know we also have the zoning issue. So let's just work together and continue to remember that on this issue.
Other commissioners? Comments, questions? Jerry?
I'd like to know what it is that you're proposing that we're voting on. So we all were given a draft resolution. Is this no longer on the table?
Well, what I would like to do is, just for everyone's background, I circulated a resolution with 3 options. And the 3 options were, 1, to support the exemption for both houses. 2 was to support the exemption for both houses, but with proviso that if there were concerns that were raised at a later point, DCRA would address those and perhaps reconsider the exemption if those concerns materialized. The 3rd option was to support the exemption for only one house and not for the other. The commissioners were divided on that. I mean, there were some who supported option 1, some supported option 3. We always try to reach a consensus if we can on the commission. Generally, we've been very successful doing that. In this instance, I think that it's a variation really on option 3, Jerry. That would be assuming that the application is withdrawn for one of the houses, then, and we can address that at a later point if and when an application is made, but assuming that the application is withdrawn for that one house and that maybe they'll be successful in negotiating an exit from the lease and so the issue won't come up. If it does come up, then they can apply again for an exemption for that house and we'll address it at that point. But that would be my proposed resolution. The resolution would stay basically the same, except for the option 3 with that variation.
So, in the comments that I submitted on this for points 1 through 17, I had several corrections.
Yes.
I've incorporated those.
Okay, because they're not in this copy that I have.
No,
Yes,
it's an old
yeah.
version. But
Okay, the one I'm looking at that was in our folder didn't have any.
Yes.
okay, I think I added those to the first 17 paragraphs, which is before the options began.
Okay, and the change that I recommended for the final paragraph, which stated, it's very short, I'll just read it. And finally, the Commission further advises that future procedures be studied and put in place to limit the number of Oxford houses or similar group houses that any single block or adjacent blocks are subject to. This will go a long way towards addressing concerns of significant population density changes for single blocks. That was just a recommendation that I had made to that.
I would assume that if we go the route that I was proposing, that would be moot, because there's only one, we're only dealing with one.
But it's still something that might come up in the future, and we have a chance now to...
Well, we could ask for them to do some analysis of that.
Right, I think that would be my recommendation, because we looked at the district laws in a lot of the area, and it is an issue of first impression. It has not come before the district, so to ask them to do the initial analysis and present that to the community so that we can have information on it first.
Right, and someplace else in here, I recommended that it would go also a long way towards alleviating neighbor concerns if it wasn't sprung on them, that they sort of knew that something was going to happen.
That is included in, I think, the
Yes,
I know it was in there, but I wasn't sure if that still was going to be part of this.
That is one of the things that we are requesting, because there are Oxford houses throughout the country, and especially here in the district. We're just asking that the neighbors have an opportunity for notice and to know about this, so they, it's a great program, and the neighbors should know about it and how they can work together. So just having that notice piece is something that we think that all communities may benefit, at least the discussion and the research of that part.
And it's not just Oxford houses, this could come up about other types of group houses. And I think we have an opportunity to, like I said, set a precedent or set something that, procedures that people could follow. So I think we should latch on to that opportunity so that this kind of thing doesn't happen in one of the 40 ANCs around the district.
Well, I will redraft the resolution for final review by the commissioners, but the approach that I suggested is what I would propose that we vote on. That is based on an assumption that the application for the second house is going to be withdrawn and resubmitted at a later point if necessary. I want to point out one other thing that Abe came up with, which I thought was really great, and that there's an academic article that was prepared, was published in 2008 by University of DePaul University Center for Community Research, and it looked specifically at Oxford House, at 154 different Oxford houses across the country, and basically the conclusion was all the fears that people had never materialized, and this is an empirical study that was done representing cross-section across the country. So, I mean, I think we have to be very careful about jumping to conclusions. And the evidence, the statistical evidence indicates to the contrary.
I would say the issue is the density here.
Yeah, and that's, they dealt with that in this issue, in this article as well. Yeah.
But now we're like to, you know, I would like all the commissioners to think, like if you traded your neighbor across from you and your neighbor directly next to you for 10 people in the house across from you and 9 right next to you, how would you vote personally?
Jason, you can locate on each street anytime you want.
Yeah.
Anytime you want.
Yeah,
3101,
Street.
Yeah. Go right next to it. 3103, 3000, whatever it is next door, go for it.
But, and you know, we're not voting tonight on that issue. We're not voting on the density issue. We are voting on approving an exemption for one house.
Yeah.
That's what I propose we vote on.
But it ties into the density issue.
Well, it will come. It can come up at a later point, but it's not right now.
Yeah, I just want to come out on this also. You know, Oxford House is a wonderful organization. I live a block from the one at 39th and Military. I've been a commissioner for 11 years. I've not heard one constituent complain ever. However, we're not talking, the issue for me is not about Oxford House, it's about density. And, you know, this is an R1 district, R1A, which is the lowest density in the city. I just think it's unfair to have 2 homes in the same block that exceed the 6-person limit. You know, I'm not even going to use the word Oxford House. It's pure city planning. It's the wrong thing to do. There should be a limit to group homes over 6 people. There should be a certain number of feet they have to be apart. I think that probably in many cities they have this law. And so, you know, I'm in favor of granting exemption for one Oxford House, but I'm not in favor of granting for 2.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a vote. Yes.
We're voting on saying 1 is okay, no comment on the second one, and then the city needs to do a better job of communicating about this.
Right, and it's based on the assumption that the other application is withdrawn.
Got it. Okay.
You said you were also going to put something in about that they study some procedures or analysis.
Yes.
Or
Yes, yes. We agree to that language that we put in.
Okay, with those provisos, I make the motion. Is there a second? All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. Now, we are going to go ahead with the rest of our agenda. We're not going to adjourn at 9 o'clock tonight. And those that need to leave, please do so quietly. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a report on the communication strategy. This is Jerry's issue. And Jerry, you want to make a report on your task force's good work?
Okay, well, I don't need to make a report since you all have the report and you've had it. I sent out a draft to everybody Friday morning, and I think it was Friday morning, Thursday late in the evening, I don't remember. And a final one based on comments that I received from everybody early this morning. So that's the report. I do want to, there are several recommendations in here. Basically, what was done was looked at existing information and then the survey that we did. We received 160 responses to the survey, and as I gave you the data in here, it was a confidence level of close to 85% of the 10,600 adults that live in our ANC, so it's a pretty good confidence level for a survey such as this. And I was surprised by some of the results in that more so on the kinds of information that people want, one being something that we don't have on our website that we've never really addressed, and that's neighborhood topics and issues was by far the thing that people wanted to learn most about. But besides that, the communication vehicles, we also looked at what's used in the community. That was a suggestion by Robert Gordon, who is on the task force. He said, how are other entities in the community using social media, for instance, to communicate with people? And overwhelmingly, it's Facebook. Almost nobody has a Twitter account. Some of the restaurants have Instagram, but that really doesn't fit our mission. We could put pictures of ourselves in there all the time, but I don't think that would work too well. And so, you know, I don't need to go over everything that's in here, but let me just basically go over some of the recommendations. One, we have pretty much a dead Facebook account with over 400 followers. We haven't posted anything in over a year. It wasn't used that much before that. But we can resurrect that and post things on Facebook, and there's an app that if you post something on Facebook, it populates a Twitter account as well. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have both, but we could easily just do one posting and it populates both of them. There's no need for any other social media accounts. Nobody was really interested in Instagram or LinkedIn, or nothing else was recommended in the other category other than emailing. When people wrote an email, what they meant was newsletters and things like that. People seem to like that. Between Chevy Chase Listserv, Nextdoor, and Chevy Chase Google Groups, no reason not to use all of them. I just want to officially go on record as saying that posting this survey was censored from even going up on the Chevy Chase Listserv. It was not allowed to be put on there because the moderator of the Listserv didn't want anything that reflected on competition for the Listserv. So I don't know how often we can keep using the Listserv for certain things, but we should still use it for everything that we can get away with posting on there. And right now, Nextdoor addresses more of our constituents than anything else. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and you could designate certain areas like Barnaby Woods, you could designate that. Hawthorne, you could designate for that. So we have a lot more options there for individual commissioners as well as the entire ANC, but those three things together, Listserv, Nextdoor, and Chevy Chase Google Groups are all good to use, even though the Google Groups doesn't seem to be growing and it's not used very often. The kinds of topics that people are interested in, based on what we saw in the survey, the top 4 things are neighborhood topics and issues, a calendar of events, and some anecdotal email that I received on that said, with the current gone and some other things gone, we should really boost up our calendar of events. That's nice, but I don't think that's our mission. Agendas of upcoming and past meetings, community resources, what's new, commissioner contact info. Some of the things we have, the list of the topics that were put on the survey was derived from looking at many different ANC websites throughout DC, and these are the things that they have on there. So those are the topics that people are interested in, and I guess we could say that they're both interested to get information via social media or newsletter or any of the listservs, as well as on our website for that. There were a couple of comments about newsletters that I mentioned in here. What letter was that? F, that it would be a good idea to have some paper copies in the back room, like Mayor Bowser used to do, and I think Brandon Todd used to do for their newsletters. That gives people an opportunity that don't necessarily use email. There are still people like that. Much like how when we did the community center survey, we had to have paper copies for a lot of people. So that's a good way to increase our audience. Recommendation for common branding logo. I just put 2 on here, the ANC 34G, Chevy Chase DC, or a map. But the other thing is we have different names for almost everything. On Twitter, we're ANC 34G. On Facebook, we're ANC 3G. On YouTube, we're ANC 3G. The newsletter is ANC 3/4G. So we, the individual commissioners are either 3 or 4, but as a whole, we're all ANC 34G. And that's probably what we need to brand ourselves as. And quickly, one last thing that I want to add to this, there's about $100,000 in the FY20 budget that's going to be made available to ANCs for communications. And one of the tools that's being looked at is something called Citizen Lab, which is a citizen engagement platform for local governments. It's used throughout Europe, in Canada, in South America in some places, just nowhere in the US yet. And it really does help to engage people. It includes survey opportunities, polls, it includes two-way communication, so you can really get a sense of what people are interested in. And that's something that we need to, I know Randy has been involved with this since day one. I've seen demos of it. There are commissioners from other ANCs around DC that have been involved in this, and I think that's something that we also should keep an eye on because it's really a positive way to foster engagement with our community. So I know we're short of time. I'd appreciate if people look through this, and there's nothing really to vote on now, but maybe at the next meeting we could make a decision about what we want to move forward with, what we have further questions about, and just how we want to address some of these concerns.
Vote on it tonight. Vote on your recommendations. I thought your recommendations were very good. But if you want to wait for another week,
you're the chair.
Well, if you want to offer a motion, I'll support it.
Any discussion? Anything you want to talk about?
Could I make just one comment?
Okay, and then I'll comment.
Officially, by the DC government, we are ANC 3G. When we got divided into 2 boards, a couple of us came together as 3/4. So we're officially ANC 3G, trading as ANC 3/4G.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. I've been confused about that. And I know our website is ANC 3G on the website, but in the URL, but on the website it says 3/4G. So even there.
We're using the trading as name there.
Right.
Can I add on to Alan's comment? Keep it ANC 3/4G. 4 of your commissioners come to Ward 4. Once you become known with Ward 4, you're not going to get your good services.
Well, 3 or 4, 3 or 3, and 1 is both.
Yes. I'm simply saying, don't become ANC 4G.
We're not. No, that's not possible.
I'm just pointing out that there's a branding issue, and after the 2020 census, if it ever happens, it's going to change again.
Yeah.
We may be changed further.
Let's
that's another detail.
Okay. So as per yes, just as for discussion, I want to thank you, Jerry, for taking the lead in doing this and going down with the data. And I really appreciate that, and I especially like I like all the recommendations, as Commissioner Speck. I especially note E, where you talked about the neighborhood topics and issues and how ANC 3F has a short page that just consumes, and I really like that idea to complement the work that's currently been compiled by A. I really this out to me, and I just want to emphasize, but in addition to that, just thank you for bringing us all the data and things that we've talked about informally, compiling in one place.
Well, one interesting thing, we do so, like you were telling the audience today, we do so much that nobody even knows about, and we deal with so many topics that a lot of people don't know about. If we had someplace on our website and we let, you know, it became a repository for people to actually learn rather than have to go. As we know, the listserv has tons of discussion, but you can't search topics on that. When you do a search, it limits it to things that ended about 5 or 6 months ago. So it's difficult. So I think that would be an excellent thing.
Fran just stuck her head in the door, suggesting that she wants to get us out of here.
Okay.
So if everyone's okay with it, I would second Jerry's motion to adopt.
Okay, I propose a resolution to adopt.
Okay. Any other further discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. All right. We're going to quickly do the update on the community center.
This isn't going to take long. I spoke to George Lewis, who's the head of procurement, yesterday, and it was today. The design contractor has been selected. However, they're not ready to make it public because there's still a few things to iron out. So it's about 2 weeks before a design contractor will be officially selected. So that we're talking early July. It takes about 6 weeks to get from selection to notice to proceed, which is the key item, because that means the contractor has notice to start work. So 6 weeks after, say, middle of July, we're talking, 1st of September. And so that kind of works out for the ANC, because we're on vacation in August. I was hoping that our first public meeting wouldn't be in August on this community center. So it looks like it's going to be after Labor Day. I'm hoping that's when it is. It doesn't go into October. So, any questions about that?
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, let's get through the commission business then. Thank you very much, Chris, for what you've done on that too. The minutes for our June 10th meeting were published on our website, on various listservs. Any modifications or changes to those minutes? All those in favor of adopting the minutes? 7-0. I don't think we have any checks this month. So the items for our July 8th meeting may include a presentation by the Office of Campaign Financing on the district's new public funding program, and then the presentation on and discussion on proposal to name Lafayette Park Lafayette Pointer Park, which is, we've got a petition to that effect. And then some presentations, hopefully from various points of view, on PEPCO's proposed rate increase for electric rates. And I'm hoping to have PEPCO here, as well as the Office of People's Counsel, and perhaps the Citizens Utility Board, which is another consumer advocate. Okay, that I think concludes our meeting. Jerry? Just 1 second.
One quick agenda item, something I mentioned to you via email the other day. I don't know if it's appropriate for us to take up. I know some other ANCs are doing it. That's to support the statement that Mayor Bowser and other elected officials, both in DC and around the country, recently made opposing the ICE roundup of immigrants in targeted cities such as Chicago, LA, Baltimore, and here in DC. Just be a support for the official DC stand.
Okay, good. And now that wouldn't be moved because it's been postponed apparently. So
it's postponed 2 weeks. So
right.
It's supposed to start 2 weeks from today, I think.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put that on the agenda as well.
Okay.
Okay, Lee.
Yeah. This is an outstanding agency. What you come up with the community center is fantastic. indicated this the same thing that Randy was told. You've got to get the DC Department of Transportation under some reasonable type of influence. You lost the Northwest Corridor. This particular community center could be fantastic. And Chris, I agree, architecturally you can do it a reasonable amount of time. But this is a very, very important crossroad. If you don't get the DC Department of Transportation under control, it's going to go on for 3, 4, and 5 years. I've been through big construction projects like that. My suggestion to Randy the other day is the lost in the Northwest Corridor. You might cultivate the Washington Post. If you want to cultivate the Washington Post, outreach to them, some of these things you're going to get the DC down to the table. One of the things that the ANC that Alan and I were on, he was the chairman sometime, I was chair for 3 years. When we wanted something, it wasn't always easy, but top people at DC down would come to us. But we did that to the press. And you just have to get that DC down under control. We're under some type of influence.
Okay, well, thank you, Lee. We're going to have to adjourn. We're very, very late. Fran's going to be frustrated that we're still here. Thank you all.